Page 31, September 10th, 2021. Hello all, and welcome to another edition of the Book Nerd Diaries. We're the chill bi-weekly podcast that dives deep into the latest books we've crossed off of our endless to-read list. Please watch out for spoilers ahead, folks, and let's get our book nerd on. There's a popular maxim you may have heard of that goes a little something like this: absolute power corrupts absolutely. People who often feel weak and lost find themselves desperately clutching for whatever semblance of control they can get as they reach for a better life for themselves. Those who are already in power, or are born into it, will do whatever it takes to keep it that way, no matter who they have to step on along the way. In the book we'll be talking about today, Lore by Alexandra Bracken. Power is truly the name of the game. The characters in this story are all in a mad scramble to gain power for themselves and their families, in a huge, never-ending game of chess. Unlike chess, however, the game they're playing has far greater consequences. Instead of a series of black and white squares, the board they're using is the entire world. And instead of castles and pawns, they're playing with people's very lives. When the Greek pantheon of gods serve as the players, however, it's just another day at the office. I know I typically save this for later on in our episodes, but I feel like I should give you a quick warning before going any further. Lore is probably one of the more intense books I've covered on the show yet, and contains content that might be disturbing for some readers, such as gore and assault. I will try my very best to be careful when describing the bloodier scenes for you today, but I would highly encourage you to check out the content warnings in our show notes before reading this book for yourself. Now, let's get on to our story, shall we? As our book opens, we meet a mortal incarnation of the Greek god of war Ares, who has just awakened in a park in the New York City borough of Manhattan, surrounded by bodies. He is welcomed and handed a fresh outfit by a servant who has been awaiting him. Shortly after, a captive is brought before him, who's revealed to be an incarnation of Hermes. The new Ares seems to be searching for something, but Hermes refuses to tell him where it is, and so Ares brutally cuts him down for his defiance and announces to the masked crowd of followers the dawn of a new era. Elsewhere in New York City, a young woman named Lore is preparing for a fight. She makes her money working the underground boxing circuit, and she is now standing in a ring constructed in the basement of a local Chinese restaurant, facing her next opponent. The match starts, and the two spar, but she dispatches the man quickly after he makes a very unwanted pass at her. After the man is let out of the ring, the next fighter is brought in to face Lore, and her blood runs cold when she sees before her a man in a familiar mask. Namely, the man is a hunter, recalling a past she has tried her very best to escape from. She calls the hunter a coward for hiding his face, and he quickly obliges by removing it. The hunter, it is revealed, turns out to be none other than her dearest childhood friend, Castor. Lore had believed him dead for the past 7 years, so his being there right across from her now is akin to seeing a ghost. He ultimately let her win their ensuing fight, but not before extending to her an ominous warning that she is in danger and that someone is looking for her. After the fight ends, Castor quietly vanishes into the crowd. Lore tries to go after him, but she finds no sign of him, save his discarded red solo cup on the ground, with a message written on it: "Come find me." Lore gathers her winnings, then joins her neighbor and dear friend Miles to get breakfast at their favorite diner. With takeout containers in hand, the duo heads back to their apartment building to eat their food. Their meal is about to get cruelly delayed, however, when right outside their building they find a disheveled woman bleeding out. The woman, who Lore recognizes as the goddess Athena, demands they attend to her before passing out from her wounds. Not wanting to leave the woman where she is, Lore and Miles carry Athena inside and into Lore's apartment. Miles, being the concerned and caring citizen he is, wants to call 911 to help her, but Lore knows disclosing the fact that they have a literal goddess in their midst may potentially put everyone involved in danger. Lore asks Miles not to call, but instead go pick up some bleach from the nearby bodega to clean up the blood and cover Athena's tracks. While Miles is gone on his errand, Lore takes the opportunity to interrogate the now revived Athena on what brought her to her doorstep. Athena reveals that her sister Artemis had betrayed her and left her to be killed by the new Ares. It is then that Athena makes an incredibly dangerous proposal. If Lore will agree to bind her fate to Athena's, she will reveal who had murdered her entire family. After some consideration, Lore answers that she wants to see the new Ares dead, as she believes that he is the one responsible for the crime, and Athena vows to help her do it. Lore finally agrees to the partnership, wishing to find revenge and closure for her family, and Athena performs the ritual, formally binding their fates together. Once the deal is done, Lore crudely cauterizes Athena's wound with a hot knife, which is exactly when a very concerned Miles returns and asks for an explanation. Not finding any way to further keep such a secret from her best friend, Lore tries her best to explain the dangerous situation they're in. Every 7 years, or 7 days, the pantheon of Greek gods returns to Earth in mortal form, and whoever kills them inherits their powers and title. As such, the descendants of heroes such as Perseus and Hercules, known as hunters, are all vying to get as much power for their families as possible during this time by being the ones to take these gods down in an event known as the Hunt. Lore, herself being the last living descendant of Perseus and a trained warrior from childhood, has tried her very best to escape the Hunt altogether after her family's deaths, to no avail. Athena's sudden arrival, and Lore's life now being bound to hers, means that any former hopes she'd had for a normal life are now completely shattered. Miles, not being of Lore's world, is understandably taken aback by this sudden earth-shattering influx of information, but despite Lore's pleas to leave and save himself, he chooses to stay with her and help however he can. From here, our trio must embark on undoubtedly the most dangerous mission of their lives. Find a way to unite the hunters, kill a bloodthirsty god, and hopefully put a stop to the hunt forever. As you may or may not know, I have always been a bit of a sucker for mythology and folklore, especially when it comes to Greek mythology in particular. I also happen to love stories that blend fantasy elements with reality, and so when I found out about Lore, I was instantly sold. Much like Rick Riordan's beloved Percy Jackson saga, which I covered in our past episode on his book, The Tower of Nero, Lore takes the familiar figures of Greek myth and translates them to the modern day in a unique way. In particular, one feature that sets the world of this book apart is that most of the gods are not the ones we know from mythology. Instead, they are former mortals who are granted a god's powers after killing them during this Hunger Games-style hunt, and each new Apollo or Poseidon brings their own personality to the roles they have to fill. The new gods even give themselves a new title after ascending to godhood, such as Heartkeeper or Tidebringer, denoting their difference from every other incarnation that has come before, and marking the beginning of a new era. Naturally, this brings about a deep sense of friction between the newly ascended gods and the originals, heightening the feeling throughout the book that no one can truly be trusted. Much like Percy Jackson himself, Our protagonist, Lore, comes from a grand legacy of heroism that she feels she will never live up to. Being orphaned from childhood, she has been forced to fight for everything she has, in more ways than one. Lore is a compelling character to me because she is allowed to feel every bit of the heartbreak and rage of the trauma she's been through, and you can't help but root for her as she seeks her version of catharsis against the god who took everything from her. Another thing I liked about this book is that it is ultimately a love letter to New York City. I've never been there myself, but through Lore's eyes, you can't help but feel the pure love she has for her city, in all its flaws and virtues, radiating right off the page. In a way, you could probably say it's the central relationship of the entire book, and the type of bond someone can only have with the places that are dearest to them. You also get to see along the way the strong kind of found family bonds that can only be formed when groups of lonely people find each other in a vast city. Instead of being a mere sidekick, Miles in particular is a de facto brother to Lore, and is shown as being every bit as capable as her. Miles even gets to jump in and save the day on more than one occasion, by simply being his human self, and he never lets the hero make his decisions for him, which I must say I love. In the end, I would certainly recommend Lore to anybody like me who has grown up with the Percy Jackson books, who might be looking for other stories offering a similar modern-day twist on Greek mythology. As I've stated earlier in this episode, however, this particular tale is quite a bit darker, so I'd take that into account before reading it yourself. This book would also be a great fit for anyone out there who may tend to prefer urban fantasy over traditional high fantasy. I mean, you have people carrying literal spears and swords as they hop into a New York taxicab, so what could possibly be more fun than that? There's adventure and tragedy and love aplenty to be found in these pages. So if that sounds like it might be up your alley, then please give Lore a try, and let me know what you think. With this, dear listeners, we have concluded our main discussion for today. There's still more show coming your way after this very quick break though, so please don't go anywhere.
Are you an author, fellow podcaster, or small business owner looking to spread the word about your product or service? Then let us help you. We offer a number of affordable monthly advertising packages in various price ranges. So if you'd like to hear your ad here in future episodes, please head on over to our page at ko-fi.com/bndpod and click on the shop tab to see what works best for you. Again, that's ko-fi.com/bndpod. Then click on the shop tab. We can't wait to work with you.
And welcome back, everyone. Now that we're on the other side of our break, it's now time for that nerdiest part of our show, the Trivia Corner. In this segment, we take a bit of a left turn and give you a trivia question related in some way to the book we've covered. Since Lore is largely set in the great city of New York City, here's a question for you. It's all about the city so nice they named it twice. Ready? Your question is, which of these famous songs written about New York City was released the earliest? Was it A. No Sleep Till Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys, B. New York State of Mind by Billy Joel, or C. New York, New York by Frank Sinatra? Your answer is B. New York State of Mind by Billy Joel. Billy Joel's lovely ode to the city that never sleeps, New York State of Mind, was released in 1976 as a track on his album Turnstiles, while Frank Sinatra officially recorded his beloved cover of New York, New York in 1979, and the Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn was released in 1986 off of their debut album License to Ill. New York City is known for its bright lights and big personalities, and this reputation is reflected perfectly in the many anthems that have been written in its honor over the years. My source for this question was Wikipedia. With that, we have finally made it to the end of our episode for today, dear listeners. Whether this is your first or 31st episode, I'm so glad you joined us today. Before we go, we just wanted to give our deepest thank you to Julie and Katie, aka one of the very best sisters a podcaster could ever ask for being our rockstar supporters on Patreon and helping us to keep the lights on. If you have the means, we hope you'll head on over and join them over at patreon.com/bndpod to start getting our bonus perks today. To show your support for absolutely free, you can also give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, share our posts on social media, or tell the people in your lives about us. You can find all the links you need to do any of that in our show notes. Small independent podcasts like ours survive on word of mouth, so every little bit truly helps. Next week, Friday, September 17th, we'll have a bonus episode just for our $5 and up Patreon subscribers, and we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks to open another page of the Book Nerd Diaries. The Book Nerd Diaries is written, edited, researched, and hosted by me, Amber Wilchin. Thank you so much to the wonderful Astrofrack from Pixabay for the use of our theme song, The Grand Entrance, and Wantamara 2 for our incidental music that plays during the Trivia Corner segments. If you'd like to connect with us online, please follow us on Instagram or Twitter at BNDPod, on Facebook at Book Nerd Diaries, or via our websites at bndpod.wordpress.com. If you have any comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes to send my way, please feel free to drop us an email anytime at bndpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, everyone, please be good to yourselves, because the world needs you, and don't forget to support your local library.